Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to Monster Analysis on Hobkin. Hobkin is the newest and latest metal legendary monster, and unfortunately the Monster Wiki hasn't updated the new monsters that have been released, but Socialpoint has released the stats and the skills, so we're still going to do this analysis. So let's just jump right into it, starting off with a life stat of 32,874. In the metal category, this is actually pretty high. Now, the only monsters that have a higher life than this monster are War Master Remtar, Tankarion, Wang Zhao, Boytek, Holter's Bodyguard, Hercule, and Patient Cyber, and then up is Hobkin. So I did name quite a few, but again, it's still pretty high in the metal category, especially for a monster that doesn't look like it'd be quite tanky. I think it's a pretty good life stat. The power is 3454, which isn't even worth ranking in the metal category. It's not one of the highest, however it's also not one of the lower ones. What is worth mentioning about this monster is the speed stat. 3553 is an incredibly fast monster. In fact, Hobkin is officially the fastest metal monster in the game, outplacing Wang Zhao, who has a speed stat of 3531, so just barely. Patient Cyber, by the way, also has 3531, and so does War Master Remtar. And so yeah, we officially have the fastest metal monster, and he even looks like he's a fast metal monster. With that being said, Wang Zhao and Patient Cyber, they're deniers. Hobkin is not a denier, so it's not like he's now the fastest metal denier. No, Hobkin is more of a support monster, and a very interesting support monster at that. So let's talk about his trait. He has the Hardened trait, so 20% less chance to get hit with negative effects, and he also has the Status Caster Area Stamina Regen, which I really like. So at the start of battle, your whole team will have stamina regen, which means they'll recover 20% of their stamina for the next 3 turns, I imagine. And so I personally really like the Status Caster. You won't have to worry about recharging with your monsters, even if you're facing enemy monsters that have the Oblation Staff or the Oblation Trap and they drain your stamina. At least you have the stamina regen to recover some of your stamina, which will allow you to utilize some sort of skill. So I really like this, I like it a lot. As for relics, this monster can hold the Trap Relic and the Essence Relic, and the cool thing about holding the Trap Relic is you can hold an Oblation Trap and drain enemy stamina. With the Essence, well, there's a lot of life regen, life for your team that you can utilize, and which I think is indicative of a support monster. As for books, this monster is a superhero monster, a good legion monster, and a mechanical monster. And with that being said, let's jump into the skills group 1 skills. First of all, we have Regroup, which deals no damage, has no cooldown, and it costs 29 stamina. Now, unfortunately, it's not enough. Like, the stamina, let's say you did get all of your stamina drained from turn 1. Stamina regen would recover 28 stamina, if I'm not mistaken. 20% of 140 should be 28, although I think it might round up or down or something. But assuming it's 28, I know it's not 29. Unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to use Regroup. I think it would have been really cool and clever if Socialpoint made it so you could use your skills group 1 skills and some of your 2 and 3 with your Status Caster, but hey, it is what it is. Anyhow, Regroup removes positive effects from all enemies. I think this is such a great skill. It is almost definitely needed considering everything that goes on in the game right now. Especially when you fight War Masters, especially considering you're a metal monster. When you fight War Master Remtar, Remtar starts the game off with skill mirror for his whole team. So if you can start the game off by removing the skill mirror and allowing your other teammates to attack, I think that's super important. And what's cooler about this skill is that it's spammable. It has no cooldown. So no matter what the enemy throws up, you can constantly be removing that positive effect. So Regroup, I think, is a very powerful skill, even if it's only from skill group 1. And that brings us to the next skill, Retreat, which removes all negative effects from your allies, which again deals no damage, obviously, has no cooldown, so it's spammable, and again costs 29 stamina. And again, if only you could actually spam these with your area stamina regen ability, but I guess you can't. Anyhow, this is also really useful, once again, because of everything that can happen in the game. There are monsters that have a Status Caster that negatively affects you at the start of the battle. Sherlock comes to mind. He applies Ignition to the enemy team. There's another one that recently got released, Gorg. Gorg applies Shock to the enemy team. So the cool thing about having Hobkin is that he could remove that as many times as you need to, and even if the enemy goes first and hits your team with something, you know, you're facing a Ruby hits you with Ignition, 2 control skills. If Hobkin doesn't get denied thanks to the Hardened trait, or if you just have some chance, you can constantly be removing negative effects. So I love the tier 1 skills a lot. Regroup, Retreat, they're amazing, they're spammable. You can remove negative effects if negative effects are if you're constantly being hurt by negative effects. Like, who else comes to mind? Like, if you're facing Lum the Magical Matriarch, or any version, and she applies Stamina Leak, Blind, and Daze, you can remove it every single turn. So I really like skills group 1, which is rare because normally skills group 1 is pretty bad. And we also have Cuckoo's Countdown, which removes 50% of total life from an enemy. And this skill does have a 2-turn cooldown, and it does cost a hefty 56 stamina, but the effect is great. 50% total life lost just like that, snap of a finger. And this is really good considering Hobkin is not an attacker, considering you're not going to be wasting any strength runes on this monster. The fact that you have this supportive monster that can easily take out so much life from the enemy monster. Like you can have one attacker with 3 strength runes that might not be able to deal as much damage as a Hobkin can against some tank like a Brutalis or whatever it may be. This is really cool. So again, Skills Group 1 I think is pretty amazing, and they can definitely be utilized depending on the situation. Especially Regroup, I think that's going to be one of the more valuable ones. Once again, with the War Masters, if you're facing Elvira, you can get rid of the evasion. If you're facing a Remtar, like I already alluded to, you can get rid of the skill mirror. If you're facing a Ragnarok, who knows what Ragnarok does? Ragnarok is so random. Whatever it is, whether it be skill mirror, whether it be the double stamina, whether it may be evasion, you can get rid of it. Whether it be 100% damage return, if you're facing Babari or Ragnarok that does the Babari status caster, you can completely get rid of it with Regroup. But enough about that, let's talk about Skills Group 2. We have Aviation Destroys Tanks. Deals moderate metal damage to enemies, removes shields from all enemies, requires cooldown. 30 damage, 1-turn cooldown, and this does have a 28 stamina cost. And so it can actually be utilized with your area stamina regen. Now, what I like about this skill, if anything, I guess, the removing shield, I would say, could come in handy specifically against an enemy Remtar. Remtar has a spammable skill that applies a 33% life shield to all of his allies, so considering that's spammable, you at least have a skill that can remove that shield. It'll also be pretty useful against tanks, or not tanks, the earth category. There are plenty of monsters that apply shields. Actually, in the metal category, Holter's Bodyguard, he's a very popular monster that people have ranked up that can apply shields. So Aviation Destroys Tanks could actually help, I think, against the enemy, depending on who they have. Moving on to the next skill, Retreat and Regroup has a 3-turn cooldown, which is pretty hefty. The cost is 27, so this is something you could use in turn 1, even if you got your stamina drained. This skill is basically Regroup and Retreat combined, right? Removes all negative effects from all allies, removes positive effects from all enemies, requires cooldown. So you get the best of the other two in one attack. It does have a hefty 3-turn cooldown, however. Nonetheless, I really like it. Next up, we have Eye from the Sky, one of the better skills this monster has. It applies True Vision to itself. We first were introduced to True Vision from War Master Sherazar. It's basically increased accuracy, so your attacks will not miss. It applies cooldown protection to itself, so if you're facing a Timerion, if you're facing a Patient Cyber, whatever monster you're facing that can activate cooldowns, you don't have to worry about that. And you give yourself 1 immediate extra turn, so this monster has an extra turn skill, which is pretty great, and this only costs 23 stamina. So even though it has a 2-turn cooldown, thanks to the extra turn, it's almost like it has a 1-turn cooldown. With that being said, increased accuracy and cooldown protection, very, very useful, especially when we talk about Skills Group 3. And let's start with Mecha Override. Applies Minor Blind to itself. This will reduce your accuracy by 25%. But keep in mind, before you do Mecha Override, you can give yourself True Vision. So it kind of balances out, right? If anything, the True Vision is stronger than the Minor Blind. And then let's see what this skill does. 50% chance to apply Curse. Curse is that torture effect that will first drain 10% of the enemy's stamina and HP, and then the next turn 20% of stamina and HP, and then the next turn 40% of stamina and HP. 50% chance of applying Ignite. Ignite will reduce HP by 20% for 2 turns, and 50% chance of applying Sunburn. Sunburn will reduce accuracy and HP by 15% for the next 3 turns. So even though it's 50%, I think because you have the True Vision, even with the Minor Blind, I think there's a high likelihood that the skills will land. Now, I would say, because I don't want to mathematically calculate what the odds of actually landing are right now, I think when this monster gets released, once people actually have this monster, it's worth testing out Mecha Override against an enemy monster that has Hardened, against an enemy monster that has Tough, against an enemy monster that has Bulwark, so we can see how effective it is. Because if we find that Curse, Ignite, and Sunburn are landing more often than they're missing, this is so darn powerful. Because you have a skill that is reducing enemy accuracy, that is reducing enemy stamina, and that is taking out a big chunk of their HP. Not to mention, when you look at Tier 1, Cuckoo's Countdown, 50% of total life, combine that 50% total life with the effect of Curse, Ignite, and Sunburn, and the enemy is pretty much dead in 2 turns. So, super, super valuable skill. Super, super valuable skill combination right here, depending on how Mecha Override actually lands. And then we have Destination Unknown. Deals heavy, very heavy earth damage to one enemy, applies a random protection effect to all allies, requires cooldown. 60 damage, 3-turn cooldown, 26 stamina cost. Another skill you can utilize thanks to your stam regen. Now what I'm not too entirely sure is, what is a random protection effect? Because to the best of my knowledge, protection is like protect from positive effects, right? If the enemy tries to remove your positive effects, if you have protection, you'll be fine. Maybe it's a random protection from like earth attacks or from light attacks or from water attacks. I'm not entirely sure what this means. Applies a random protection effect, because it's not saying a random positive effect. So I'm not entirely sure. We're gonna have to wait and see what exactly this is. Right now, I don't think it seems like anything too impressive. We have Best Escape 2 applies area dodge to an ally. Oh my gosh, I wish this would have been a team skill. That would have been incredible. If this was a team skill, you could have given this monster like 3 speedruns. Dodge area to one ally. It has a 3-turn cooldown, 18 stamina cost. This can still definitely be utilized, especially if you know the enemy denier is going next and you want to protect your attacker because your attacker can OTK next turn. Apply the dodge area, the area dodged effect, ally, skill, whatever. Apply the area dodge positive effect to your ally, and then your ally can win the battle. So I like this a lot. It can definitely be utilized. It also makes me question how exactly to rune Hobkin to be the best, right? How do you root him to be the best of his ability? Because I think there are arguments to giving him 3 speed runes so he can go first and maybe apply the area dodge. But you see, that's really it. Until I know what Destination Unknown really does, I think 3 speed really wouldn't work unless the next monster in your turn order is a denier. I think that's when it would work, right? Again, if you're facing an Elvira and you can go with Hobkin first to remove positive effects from the enemy team, that's good. If you can remove skill mirror from the enemy team, that's good. But then your denier is going to have to go next in the turn order. I think a lot of players are probably going to want to run this monster as a support monster with team speed runes and then just have him go to best fit your team, because he has a really great speed stat. If your attacker is also using team speed and no single speed, Hobkin is most likely going to go before any other monster you have if they're using team speed. So Hobkin can then react. If you need to remove positive effects from the enemy, he can do that. If you need to remove negative effects from your team, you can do that. If you need to just go after the enemy and try to like kill them with the Cuckoo's Countdown, or like if Cuckoo's Countdown will reduce enough HP from the enemy so that your attacker can go next in the turn order and finish them off, you can do that. So I think that's Hobkin's niche. That's probably where he fits the best. Have him go second in your team, which is by giving him 3 team speed and partnering up with an attacker that has team speed and 2 strength, or 2 team speed and strength, whatever it may be. As long as your attacker monster doesn't have a single speed rune where you outpace Hobkin, I think that's going to be his place in most teams. Have him go second, you have your denier go first, you have Hobkin go next, and then you have your attacker. And I think that's really where he shines the most, right? Because by putting him in the middle of your team combination, by having the denier deny as they always do, by having Hobkin being able to react to whatever happened, whether you missed, whether you want to set up for something. Like, let's say you failed to deny one of the enemy monsters that's going next in the turn order, and they only have AoE deny. Let's say it's a Ruby for whatever reason. You can do Best Escape to only your attacker, like I mentioned, right? If you're facing an enemy that set up shields, you can do Aviation Destroys Tanks, or you can even do Regroup. You can, like, there's so much versatility with this monster going second in the turn order, so I like that a lot about Hobkin. So team speed, and we didn't even talk about the ultimate, so let's talk about that real quick. The Songbird removes all negative effects from your allies, applies protect positive effects on your allies so they can't easily be removed, applies double damage, and applies area dodge. So pretty much all 3 of your monsters are going to get a turn in with double damage, and they're going to kick some serious butt because they're going to have no negative ailments. So great, fantastic support monster who I honestly really like. He's super fast, pretty tanky considering how fast he is. Power is irrelevant. I love the trait that hardens area stamina regen. He has really great relics, and overall he's a pretty good support monster. So with that being said, that has been my analysis on Hobkin. Now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about this monster? How useful do you think he's gonna be given the books he's in? In the Superheroes book, do you think he's gonna get a lot of usage? How about Good Legions? How about Mechanical? Or in what book do you think he's gonna shine the most? Is he gonna shine in his own metal category? Whatever thoughts you may have about this monster, please let me know in the comments below. I am really looking forward to hearing you guys' thoughts on Hobkin. And with that being said, I will see you all next time.